back again with Star Wars Yoda. We're going to work on the feet today and finish up the head. I forgot to have you guys pull those strings from the back of the head, right here. Forgot to have you pull those to the inside. So we're going to do that on our video today. And we're also going to finish those feet, and we'll kind of see how long that video takes, and we'll move on from there. Beginning the feet, we're going to need to do a little bit of instruction. And we'll talk about what BLO equals and what popcorn stitch equals and where to find those instructions if I'm not clear enough in this video. But before we do that, I want you to take and cut the brown yarn and cut it long. We're going to keep it out of our way because we're going to be changing to green for doing the feet. The other thing is, I told you in the opening of this video, I had forgotten to have you pull these two pieces of yarn to the inside. So there's two ways you can do that. If you have already stuffed it, you could pull the stuffing out, but I'm going to kind of cheat. We're going to go up through the center, work our way around to the back with our crochet hook, and then come out right where that green stitch is. Kind of work through the stuffing there. Then I'm just going to grab that green stitch and I'm going to pull it through. You will never know that we pulled that to the inside. So you can get it through here where you can see it and then pull it on completely through like that. That's one way to do it. That's honestly the easiest way. The other way you could do it is to take your needle, thread your needle. This is always harder because it seems like the eye of the needle is never as big as the yarn is thick. But you can thread the needle, and then if you've left a long enough tail, go ahead and take that needle, put it through. It's the same concept. Put it through that opening, where this time I did the brown, and pull it through. Now you can tell from the back, you really don't even notice that. We're going to stuff Yoda's head back tight again. It pulled a little of the stuffing into his body. And then the other thing we're going to do is go ahead and cut those threads off. So for the brevity of the film, I went ahead and went off camera while I cut those threads off. But you can see I got every part of the threads. Now if you're like me, this is your long piece that we're going to leave. But these are sticking out. You can see here that they're sticking out. So I'm just going to push his torso up a little bit and cut those a bit shorter because it's really not going to matter. Actually, before I do that, I think I'll just tie a knot in them. They're super close together on the back side of his head. Just kind of tie it so if you're giving this to little kids and they're going to play with it, it'll kind of keep it from ever being pulled out. All right, got that done. Keep your long piece out of the way and go ahead and snip the ends of those two pieces we pulled through the back of Yoda's head. Just kind of get them short enough so that when you pull his torso down, you're not going to see them. All right, so again, we have the front of our little guy, we have the back, and we are ready to change to green. In preparation for doing Yoda's feet, I wanted to make a couple of notes on my pattern here so that I didn't forget what these abbreviations were. So you see we have BLO, that means back loop only. I'll show you that in this video. And we have 3 DC pop, that's 3 double crochet popcorn. And as we're making the feet, that's what makes the feet. That's a stitch that makes the feet. So if you get confused in my video, I want you to know that the abbreviation chart is on page 5 of our little book. So page 5. And then the instructions, here's the abbreviation chart. The instructions for that popcorn stitch are on page 15. So just if you want to go back and read the instructions and familiarize yourself with the words, that's where you're going to find those. So let's get going. We are still on our page 17, and you can see here that it says to make the feet, we're going to find the stitch that's in the center of our Yoda. So to do that, I'm going to use my needle because that always just helps me. I'm gonna do this visually. I'm gonna look kind of through his eyes and just kind of draw an imaginary line right down to the center stitch. So I think on mine, it'll be different on yours possibly, but on mine, my center stitch is right here, and I'm gonna go ahead and mark that with thread. Our instructions say, so I've marked mine with red thread here, and our instructions say that once you've marked this thread, you're going to count to each side 5, not counting the stitch we marked. So for me, it's going to be 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Put my needle in here, grab a different color of thread. I'm going to use white this time. And this will be the placement for 1 foot. Well, if I could thread my needle right, guys. There we go. Okay, so 1 foot will be placed on 5 from this. We're not counting that middle stitch in our 5. We're moving 1 stitch to the right and 1 stitch to the left of that before we count our 5 stitches. So again, here's my middle stitch. I'm going to count to the other direction. Here's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. Try it again. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and this is going to be the placement for my next, for my other foot. So again, cut a piece of thread, put that in there really quickly and tie it off so that you can see exactly where the foot placement is going to be for your Yoda. And they'll be evenly spaced when we're starting them. Just marking them with thread just makes it so much easier, and you don't have to second guess yourself all the time. All right, so we have, move that out of the way. We have 1 foot, we have our center, we have a foot and a foot, and that's where we're going to start. And now it's time to change to our pale green yarn. Changing to green yarn, we'll go ahead and tie our paper clip back on. That seems to me to be the easiest way to change our yarn colors and giving it a little bit of weight as we start our new color. So go ahead and remember, wrap up. And now we're going to start at our red thread and picking up the back loop only, BLO, back loop only. We're going to come in and single crochet. Can't get my thread. All right, we're going to come in and single crochet over to the start of our white thread, which is where we will begin our popcorn stitch. Having trouble getting it started. Again, if you have trouble getting it started like I do sometimes, be patient with yourself. You guys have come a long way getting the little Yoda going. See, the nice thing about that paper clip is I almost picked up that piece of yarn, but the paper clip reminded me that that's not my skein of yarn. That's just the tail. So back loop only, we single crochet around to the beginning of our popcorn stitch. All right, our next stitch then will begin our foot. That's where we start our popcorn stitch, and we're going to do 3 double crochets and a popcorn to make the popcorn stitch. So we wrap once, we go in, wrap again, we come back. We just pull through 2 threads, wrapping it again completes that double crochet. And we're going to do 2 more in 1 stitch. So we wrap it, go in the same hole, wrap it again, come back, pull through 2, wrap, pull through the last 2, again in the same stitch, wrap it, pull through 2 more. That completes the 3DC. Now to complete the popcorn stitch, we pull the loop up and take our hook out. We come back to our starting double crochet and push our hook through, then take this yarn piece and wrap it over the hook. See how I did that? Now we're gonna grab that last loop and pull it through the 2 double crochets that we've already completed. And that creates a little pop, and that's why they call it a popcorn stitch probably. Now in the very next stitch, we're gonna do 3 more of those because our foot's a little bit wider. So we're gonna go 2 and 2, pull through 2, pull through 2 more, wrap again. It's our 3rd double crochet in that stitch. And then that finishes that set of double crochets. We come back, we grab the yarn, and then pull it through the one we just, the beginning, and we start again. So the very next stitch, double crochet, twice, double crochet again, twice, our 3rd and final. Remember, pull the hook up, take the loop off, come back to where we started in our first double crochet, put it over the top. My dog is in the background having a dream, if you're wondering what that sound is, and we pull it through. All right, good job. Now we've finished 1 foot. See, it's kind of bumpy. And now we're just going to single crochet around until we get to the start of our next foot. And for our next foot, because we want it to be exactly the same distance from our red thread, we'll stop 3 stitches short of our white thread and complete a foot. And I'll show you what that looks like just as soon as we get around here. So right now you're just single crocheting in each stitch, each brown yarn stitch around. We're going to be putting a layer of green all the way around Yoda. All right, I have come back and you can see that I have crocheted around to 3 stitches from my white thread. And the reason I want to stop 3 stitches before I get to that white thread is because we want to end our foot at the white thread. We began our foot over here at the white thread, so we want our feet to be evenly spaced. So again, we're going to do those 3 double crochets in 1 stitch and finish with a popcorn stitch. So wrap, insert, pull through, whoops, pull through, and we're just going to wrap again, pull through 2, wrap again, pull through 2. Again, we're going to do the same thing 1 more time in that same stitch. And our 3rd and last before we complete our popcorn stitch by pulling up that loop, coming back to where we started, insert in the first double crochet, put your loop over your hook, and using your fingers, just pull that through. That completes that popcorn stitch. Then we're going to go into the next stitch, and again 3 double crochets. And at this point, I'm going to cut my white thread because it's in my way. You can do the same if it gets in your way. Or you can cut it later. It won't matter a lot. That's our 2nd double crochet. We want to go 1 more in that same stitch. And then pull up the loop. Come back to the beginning of that set of double crochets. Pop the loop over and pull it through. Slick and easy. And then we've got 1 more set of double crochets to finish out that foot. There's 1, 2, and our third. Remember, now we pull that loop up, come back to our first double crochet of that set and pull it through. Perfect. And now we're simply going to single crochet over to where we started with our green. So we just slip in and single crochet. You guys are old pros at the single crochet now. Come back to the start. Now at this point, her instructions say to put the beige toes on the feet, but to be honest, I don't think it's the best time. You can follow her instructions if you like, but if we continue on with round 21, we're going to be closing the gap between these feet. We're going to start single crocheting 2 stitches together, which will shorten this gap. So I'm not going to do the beige. We can always come back and do the beige, but I think at this point I would like to go ahead and finish with rounds 21, 22, and maybe even 23, but let's go ahead with 2 rounds of single crocheting, 2 single crochets together, which means we go into 1 single crochet and wrap. We go right back into another one and wrap again and pull through all of them, and that crochets those 2 together. And then we're going to do a single crochet just like normal. Then we're going to go and put 2 more together. So what we're doing is shortening up the base of our little Yoda. We're going to go ahead and work in our popcorn stitch the same way. We single crochet and then bring the next 2 together and pull through all 3. And that, you can see that that's shortening up our baseline. Again, we're going to single crochet after that 1 time and continue that process all the way around. Single crochet, then crochet the next 2 together. And as we close up Yoda's base, we'll get down to where we're just using thread, I think, to close off his body, stitching it like we would a seam on a piece of fabric. Remember, every other one you're going to just single crochet, and then the next 2 you're going to stitch together to shorten the base. If you have any questions or comments, please put them in the boxes below this video, and I can answer them as quickly as possible. That may help if you have some questions that I'm not covering completely. Okay, we're back around to our start, and it just appears to me that these feet seem a little far apart, but I'm following her directions as far as spacing. So let's go another round and see if we draw them a little bit closer together so that they're going to look like feet in the end. So again, we're going to continue with closing it up. We're going to do 2 single crochets together, and then a single crochet. together, and then a single crochet. And we're just going to continue this all the way back around to our red thread. This is definitely not an easy project, and if you guys are this far, I really, again, applaud you for your hard work and your effort, because this was marketed to kids, but as my son pointed out, there's no way that his teenage daughter knew how to read these instructions, and so that's what prompted these videos in the first place, is trying to help her enjoy her Christmas gift. So we're back down to the front and our last single crochet there. And you can see that we have our feet, I'm going to pull that out a little bit. Our feet have come closer together now. And they look a little bit, it looks a little bit more in proportion. And what we'll do is we'll go back and put toes on the feet, which will give them that, will help them stand out a little bit. We'll put some beige yarn in there. To be honest, we followed her instructions. I don't particularly like the distance between these feet, and if you don't like them, certainly pull out and do the whole thing over and maybe set your thread out 3 stitches from the center rather than 5, and it might be a better spacing. But I'm going to go ahead and try to follow this as much as I can with the spacing that we have, and maybe once he's stuffed we'll like it. Again, personal preference. I'm going to leave mine, but if you want to pull yours out and start with a spacing that is 3 stitches in, they'll definitely be closer together. We do still have one more round to go before we fasten off. On round 23 it says FO, and that means fasten off. But our hole is getting quite small, as you can see, so I think now we're going to go in and stuff the rest of Yoda's body. And at this point, I think it's time to clip off the paper clip end, make that fairly short, stuff it on up inside, making sure that you keep out this area that you're still crocheting with, and we still haven't cut that off. So we're going to stuff Yoda's body because we don't want that hole to get too small. So actually, after we get to round 23, we may be happy with his feet placement. Don't do anything drastic yet. Going to need a little more stuffing to make him nice and plump. Again, the stuffing is to your preference. So we do want to get the stuffing in though before we close that hole up even smaller. And obviously I got a little bit too much there. Going all the way, pushing more up into his head. As you can see, I actually had to come back and pull some things out, and I had already stitched his mouth on. But you can refer to your instructions to stitch that mouth on. It's just a black thread, stitching it in along there to make the mouth. And again, if you have trouble, I will repost or answer your questions best I can. All right, so we have one more round. You can see how small that the hole is, and we have one more time that we're gonna stitch 2 stitches together with a single crochet in between, and that's gonna close this hole up even more. So here we are, we're going to take the next 2 together and then a single crochet. As I've talked about before, it can be very difficult to crochet in the round like this. And so, again, just be patient with yourself. If you have to start over, stop and start over, just stop and start over. Everybody who looks at it is going to think it's amazingly perfect, even though you might see the flaws. Okay, here we are back at the beginning, and you can see now we are pretty much done with our little guy. So again, the feet spacing seem a little wide to me, but we're going to go ahead and put some toes on and we'll see what we get then. You're going to pull this yarn loop out pretty far, stitch it. I want you to have a good amount left over here. And then we're going to thread our needle with the end. And just kind of take it and tack it in to make that hole nice and tight. You can just kind of weave it through there, and then you close that hole up nicely. And splitting your yarn as you take it through will secure the end. And I'm just going to kind of weave it back and forth until I've used a little bit more of my long tail up, and I think that'll secure it nicely. So I'm going to come inside here one more time, pull it tight, snip it off close, and just pull my yarn apart. It'll tuck that end right in. At this point, I know where the front of my Yoda is, and I'm going to cut off the rest of my little threads. And now we have Yoda, and again, she had asked us to do the claws earlier on, but I didn't feel like that was really the time for convenience to make those claws. I think it was better that we closed it up. So I'm going to cut a length of the pale yarn. I'm going to thread my needle. So now we're ready to put the claws on our feet. We're going to start at Yoda's center back because we want to hide the tail of our yarn. And we're going to come in at the front of that last toe on whichever side you're working on. And then we're going to simply backstitch. So we have it, the yarn's coming out here, and we're going to come behind and back up where the yarn was originally coming out. And that makes a nice little back stitch. Because I want it to show up, I'm going to do that twice. And this is actually the same way that you make the mouth. I know that's not going to show on this video because I had to redo part of my Yoda and tear out to make it more user-friendly for you guys. So I stopped the video, but I already had the mouth on, if that makes sense. To do our second claw, we're going to come in front of that toe, same way. Going to do a back stitch, and we're going to back stitch twice. I really like doing it this way after my Yoda is stuffed rather than following Lucy's directions and doing it before. I think that it just makes it a little bit easier, and we didn't have to change yarns twice. We just continued with green until we were ready to do the claws. So now we have 3 little claws on that foot. We're going to slide in where we just came out of and go underneath the yarn over to the opposite side, and again on the far side of the first toe. And you can tell those toes because that's where our popcorn stitch is. And then we're going to do that back stitch again twice to make it match the other side, and just slide on underneath all the way to the second toe will work. We're ready to start the back stitch on the second toe. There's back stitch 1 and 2, and again we can slide right underneath to the outside part of that third toe. It makes them just kind of pop when we do it twice. You can really see those toes that way. So there we go. We have our little Yoda with his toes, and I hope you like that spacing. I think it's a little wide myself, but I think once we get his cloak on and his arms on, it's probably going to look just fine. So again, to hide our tail, we want to go back in and maybe come back up around the center, pull it tight, and clip it close. And then you can just work that very end right back in to your Yoda, and you won't see that. All right, there we have it, our little Yoda. If you're finding these videos helpful, please hit the subscribe button, give it a thumbs up, and share it with your family and friends. And we'll get Yoda up and running before too many more videos. Thanks for watching. Have a great day.